Let's begin.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Rhonda Fleming, and I'm going to tell you a little more about myself in just a moment. However, first, I want to tell you a little bit about my surroundings. I'm in a conference room, and it's blurred out. My background is blurred out. So I am an African-American senior woman. And by senior, I do not mean senior in college. I am a senior woman, so I'm somewhere in my 60s, and I am delighted to be with you this evening. So I work for the Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh, where I serve as the Chief of Prevention, Intervention, and Outreach. I've been with the organization for more than 30 years. Some about our services here at Women's Center and Shelter. We are most commonly known for our shelter, which is a very important service that we have. However, we have a plethora of other services here at Women's Center and Shelter. Oftentimes, women call our hotline, which is the first step to getting any services from Women's Center and Shelter, is to start with our hotline. And I will give you that number in just a minute. And as I was saying, oftentimes, women call the hotline just to begin a conversation. Oftentimes, conversations start with, well, is it abuse if? So they're asking questions because they may feel physically or emotionally unsafe in their relationship, and they're not sure. And the caller is led to help figure out things for herself. So this is often just the beginning of her domestic violence journey, again, where she's just beginning to find out and get answers to questions. Some of our other services include our legal advocacy program. We have legal advocates who will help victim survivors understand the legal system, particularly if they're going to obtain a protection from abuse order. We have an on-site children's advocacy program for women in residence. And because we also offer group counseling, there are sometimes women who are here who are not residents. However, their children can also use our children's advocacy program. We have, I mentioned group counseling, individual count for men in our program, especially for men, our battering intervention program. For men who have been sitting or have gone to court, maybe through a probation officer, a therapist, a family member, or even himself, they realize that he needs battering intervention counseling. So we do have that program as well. One of our panelists this evening is also an employee at Women's Center and Shelter, so I will not steal her thunder as she will share more information a little later. That hotline number that I mentioned, 412-687-8005. Again, 412-687-8005. It is a 24-hour hotline. Our WCS Pittsburgh.org. Pittsburgh is spelled out and not abbreviated. On that website, you'll find a lot of information, including our text to chat line. So please do give it a visit. So this evening, again, we have a lot of panelists with us for the Week Without Violence by the YWCA. And that has been this week, October 20th through the 24th. And it's a movement to come together to advocate for a safer world for women, girls, and families. This year's theme, Safe Beginnings, protecting mothers, nurturing futures. It's all about how we can support moms and children as they build hopeful and healthier futures. the Week Without Violence campaign, maternal and infant health disparities, the need for safe, stable housing for families, mothers' increased risk of experiencing domestic violence, barriers to leaving abusive relationships, including financial abuse, which I have to pause and say is very, very important. And oftentimes we don't think about it. If it's not physical violence, we think, oh, well, it must not be so bad. And that's we also will address legal challenges. And I am honored to be the moderator this evening alongside our distinguished panelists. Their views do not represent the YWCA as an organization, but YWCA welcomes their expertise, opinions, and passion for creating a world without violence. We also thank Power Home Remodeling for sponsoring this event. Let me begin to introduce our panelists. I'll begin with Taylor Pinkston. Taylor is the clinical practice team lead at Healthy Start. Kimberly Turner has her master's degree and she is the director of economic advancement at the YWCA of Greater Pittsburgh. Roxanne Elizabeth Epperson is the CEO and founder of Women Against Abusive Relationships with a wonderful acronym, WAAR. That's what we have to do. This is a battle we have to war and win. Megan Rose is the director of Standing Firm, a national program of Women's Center and Shelter. And Roxanne Davis is a survivor who will share her story with passion this evening. Welcome to all of you. We are delighted to have you here this evening. So panelists, I'm going to ask, as I introduce you now individually, I'm going to ask when you do speak to please tell a little bit about your background. So for anyone who may need to know that, please just share a bit. Like I said, mine is blurry, but share a bit about your background and where you are. And then we're going to ask you to give a brief overview of your services, your program eligibility, how someone can reach you, and is there a typical response time? Because I mentioned for us, we have a 24-hour hotlines, so that's pretty immediate at Women's Center and Shelter for that. Other services may take 2 to 5 days, depending on the company. Now, we're going to begin with Taylor. If you're ready, we will start with you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the YWCA for having me. I'm Taylor Pinkston. I'm a licensed self-love social worker. I was the team lead at Healthy Start, but now I'm the program manager for our clinical practice department. I'm really grateful for that honor and privilege. I am a Black woman, Pittsburgh born and raised. I have a 9-year-old little girl. I am in my home office, very lush and green. I have a piece of art behind me that is of a flower, and I have braids in my hair and gold jewelry. I am very honored to be a part of this because although I am not a survivor of physical and domestic violence, I have experienced verbal and psychological abuse. And believe in the advocacy of using our voices. And so alongside of my colleagues at Healthy Start, we have a domestic and intimate partner violence support team that collaborates with amazing organizations like the Women's Center and Shelter and WAAR and YWCA and PAR, all to prevent and provide intervention for individuals in domestic and intimate partner violence situations. So thank you all for having me.
And Taylor, can you address a little more for us? Let me just find this. maternal and infant health disparities. Can you just address that for us and maybe even define it? I mean, we take for granted that we all know what we mean when we say disparities, but can you just define disparities? What does that mean and what does that look like?
So at Healthy Start, our mission is to improve maternal and child health, to reduce poor birth outcomes and infant mortality in Allegheny County. We also serve Westmoreland County. And so some disparities that we see are things related to social determinants of health, things that get in the way or are barriers to having access to treatment, to services, to programs like ours. And so Healthy Start is an organization that I said supports families as a whole. So we have clinical support and home visiting and breastfeeding support and fatherhood programs. And we also have a teen outreach program and community health advocates. We do an array of things at Healthy Start. And so it's important for us to help reduce those barriers, things like transportation and housing and access to quality health care and education, and just to know your rights as a parent, as an individual, as somebody who deserves safety, care that is quality, and support, Rhonda. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. It does. It does. Thank you so very much. All righty. So next, Kimberly, we're going to turn to you. And Kimberly, if you would do the same by sharing a little bit about your your surrounding, move into your topic.
Okay, my name is Kimberly Turner. I am the Director of Economic Advancement here at YWCA Greater Pittsburgh. I have been in this capacity as the Director of Economic Advancement for 3 years. I have been employed with YWCA Greater Pittsburgh for over 20 plus years. My pronouns are she, her. I am a 50-year-old African-American woman. I have box braids in my hair, but it is in a messy bun right now. I wear eyeglasses. I am currently in my office on the south side at our YWCA Carson Street location.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. And now, can you enlighten us more around the need for safe, stable housing for families?
Yes. So within economic advancement, we have supportive housing programs, and we also have our resource center. So within our supportive housing programs, we do have a rapid rehousing program as well as a bridge transitional housing program. So our rapid rehousing program, we can assist individuals for up to 24 months of financial assistance and rental assistance. And then with our transitional bridge program, it could be up to 12 months. So when individuals are referred to us for those supportive housing programs, they are referred to us through Allegheny Link. So Allegheny Link does a basic assessment for those individuals, and there's certain categories. One of those categories is individuals that are experiencing domestic violence. So when they are referred to us, we're able to provide assistance for them and get them set up with a safety plan. We also have our resource center, where we work with individuals that may contact us that need basic needs or financial assistance. And we make sure that we get them connected to resources in the community. So whether that's that they're contacting us because they need rental assistance, utility assistance, assistance with security deposits because they are, you know, just transitioning into another home, or maybe they are fleeing domestic violence and they need to secure a new place to live. So we make sure that we get them connected to those resources as well.
Very good. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. We want to move on. Yeah, I appreciate it. Your surroundings, your background. Okay, I'm not sure who may have heard me. Can give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, okay, thank you. Now you can hear me. So Roxanne Epperson, we're coming to you and asking you please to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background and your surroundings, a little bit about WAAR, and then we will move into your topic.
Okay, my background is blurred like Rhonda's. And I am African-American woman, just turned 70 years old, I'm proud to say. And I have on glasses and I wear locks and I have on I think it's dark green and gold dress. And that's my background. And Women Against Abusive Relationships, I founded 21 years ago. We just celebrated 21 years. And we provide services to those who've been abused, of course. And our most recent initiative is ASK, and that stands for After Shelter Care. And we are partnered with most of the shelters in Allegheny County to provide services, and all of those on the screen we're partnered with. And so we want to provide services and want to help the women heal after being traumatized through domestic violence, help them get their lives back on track after experiencing the trauma. And we're just hoping that one day we will be put out of work because we won't be needed anymore. But I know that's a fantasy. So in the meantime, we will just keep providing services. And yes, so you want me to go into my topic now, I believe?
Thank you. Yes, Roxanne, and now let me just announce that Roxanne is going to talk about barriers to leaving an abusive relationship and increased risk of abuse for mothers. Thank you, Roxanne.
Yes, okay, so we know, there's so many barriers. There's some common barriers to leaving an abusive relationship. And we know that it's not a simple choice in some cases. Some survivors, or especially mothers, they face a wide range of obstacles that can make escaping a violent relationship more dangerous. And we do know that when one is attempting to leave a relationship, the likelihood of their being harmed is escalated. So, and some of the reasons they don't leave is because of the financial issues. They're emotionally overwhelmed, and I'm going to read some of these off to you if you don't mind. And the first one is on financial abuse and instability. And abusers often control all money. And I remember when I first started doing this work, a woman telling me that she had to give her paycheck to her partner. So he controlled her. And she better not be 5 minutes late getting home. She better come straight home from work. No stopping anywhere. So that's the kind of control he had over her. Survivors may lack job experience or face sabotage from their abuser. Another woman shared with me when I first started doing this work. I couldn't believe this. It was one of my first workshops. I was new at this. She says, "I have 6 children and no job, no money. Where am I going?" So that was my opportunity to let her know that she could go to the Women's Center and Shelter. And it always baffles me, and even today, I'm doing this 21 years later, and people still do not know all the resources that are available. I hate that. So that's why we're out here doing what we're doing, trying to make sure people know. Legal challenges. Survivors might be dealing with custody battles, and the survivors may fear losing their children or enduring court-related trauma. Accessing legal protection can be time-consuming. And then we have emotional and psychological manipulation, where survivors may be gaslighted or threatened into staying. Abusers may threaten suicide, kill their pets, threaten to kill their pets or children to control the survivor. And I remember when I used to hear about the threatening suicide before I knew about this issue, I had the mindset of, oh, if he want to kill himself, go ahead and kill himself. But the point is, he might kill you first and then kill himself. So don't take it lightly if someone threatens suicide. That's very, very serious. And then as far as, threatening to kill family members and pets, always we talk about, and I used to share this video in my workshops. It was a story on Oprah where the man had threatened to kill the woman, no, to kill her mother. And he did kill her mother, and then he shot her in the face. And her face had to be totally reconstructed. Her name is Carolyn. I wish I could get Carolyn. I wonder where Carolyn is. I'm gonna hunt her down because we need to hear her story of survival, because she's definitely a survivor. She did survive it. Then we have social isolation. Abusers often isolate survivors from support systems, and survivors may fear stigma or judgment if they speak out. And I'm gonna talk about judgment in a minute, but then we have the lack of safe and stable housing. Emergency shelters are often full. I can't tell you how many calls I get, and I'll say, well, did you call the Women's Center and Shelter? Did you call this one? Did you call that one? Yes, they're full, they're full. So I don't know how we address that issue. We definitely need more shelters, more beds, more spaces. And long-term affordable housing options are limited, especially for women with the children. And then I want to talk about why mothers face greater risk. Okay, pregnancy and motherhood can escalate abusive behavior as the abuser seeks control. Mothers may delay leaving out of fear for their children's safety or custody concerns. And parenting while experiencing abuse amplifies stress and trauma. You can just imagine what they might be going through. Then there's limited financial and emotional support systems that create dependency on the abuser. And I just wanted to leave you with this because I hear this so often. And I'm hoping and praying that now that you know that there are multiple barriers to someone for reasons why people stay in these relationships, they're not stupid. And I cringe whenever I hear someone say that. Well, she's just stupid. Why don't she just leave? Or if I was her, I wouldn't take that mess and whatever. But you're not her, and you don't know her situation. So please, please, please stop judging. And so just remember that compassion heals and judgment harms. Because what we do when we start judging them, we're re-victimizing the survivor. And sometimes that compassion that you show for them might be just the thing that's going to help them take that step and get out. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. Certainly appreciate that information. That is very, very important. And anytime the YWCA or any of the programs that's represented here, and Roxanne Davis also shares her story publicly, anytime this happens, this is to raise awareness. We really hope that anyone and everyone listening to this evening will share this. Maybe you need this. And so there's not any judgment amongst us for sure. And again, the hotline number for Women's Center and Shelter is 412-687-8005. If you need to use that number, please do. It's 24 hours. If you have a sister, friend, a cousin, an uncle, a nephew, whomever, yes, an uncle and nephew, because it may be a male who is the victim and the survivor of an intimate partner violence relationship. So please do help us increase the awareness by sharing the information. And now it is my delight to introduce and Megan is going to share information about initially about her background, who she is and where she is, and take it from there.
Great. Thank you, Rhonda. It's an honor and a pleasure to be in the company of the panelists tonight. As Rhonda said, my name is Megan Rose. I'm a white woman in my mid-40s. I have bangs and about shoulder-length brown hair. I'm wearing a cozy sweater. It's maroon. My pronouns are she, her, and behind me is some art, a plant, and a painting I got from my community's Buy Nothing group. So I'm sitting in my dining room, and I'm delighted to be telling you about the work that I do at Standing Firm, which is actually a part of Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh. Specifically, I am excited to share with you why domestic violence, partner violence is actually an employer's issue as well. So you've heard so much from our panelists about the intersections of domestic violence with maternal health, with mental health, with the need for safe and stable housing. And I'm here to share a little bit about the opportunity that employers have to be a safe space and a connection to some of the resources you've heard about tonight. Most folks, when talking about the issue of domestic violence, may think of some of the examples raised in our time together already: physical violence, sexual violence, verbal abuse. But several folks on this panel identified financial abuse as a part of the power and control dynamics often present in domestic violence. And I'm so glad that there have been mentions of financial abuse already. Financial abuse has a very long definition, but it can include things like preventing a survivor from obtaining or maintaining employment, can be controlling access to resources, money, issuing a survivor an allowance, or restricting access to the information needed to apply for public benefits or apply for employment. Can also look like coerced debt, so pressuring a survivor to enter into debt without her consent, sometimes without her knowledge altogether. And it can take a lot of forms, but the important thing to realize about financial abuse is that the effects of it can last long after the relationship is over. And so one of the strategies that Standing Firm uses to support a survivor who is seeking financial independence, meaning she wants to separate from her abuser and wants to be on her own or his own financially, is employer engagement. First, I want to just address the idea of this concept of financial independence. According to the Hotline, which is a national organization, 67% of survivors delay leaving an abusive relationship or feel forced to return to that abusive relationship because they are financially dependent on their abuser. You heard Kimberly discuss, the need for safe, stable, affordable housing. That's just one example of how difficult it can be to separate or move away from an abusive relationship. It's expensive to live alone. It's expensive. Childcare is expensive. Housing is expensive, right? And so for our survivors who are employed, We want to ensure that those employers recognize the issue of domestic violence, respond with compassion, resources, policy, and then refer those survivors in their workforce to the services in their community. And the same goes for people who are choosing abuse. Perpetrators are employees at workplaces as well. And so we want to support those employers to recognize the signs, respond, and refer for services. So Standing Firm has been in existence for around 16 or 17 years. We got our start outside of Women's Center and Shelter, and really grew out of a research study conducted at a large healthcare company, a large healthcare employer right here in the Pittsburgh area. And that study, that survey, showed that a significant percent of that workforce had experienced domestic violence, or a colleague had experienced domestic violence, and it had impacted their ability to be successful in the workplace. And so the founders of the Standing Firm organization identified that workplaces were an ideal opportunity for intervention, for prevention, for sharing information about domestic violence. And so that's the work we've been doing for the past 16 or 17 years. We operate on a membership model, so employers join the Standing Firm membership. And with our 2 levels of membership, they receive different levels of benefits. We have training that employers can make a part of their onboarding process or a part of an annual training requirement. We can deliver trainings that are customized or tailored for a particular workplace or workforce. We support those employers in developing a policy. So what does your personnel manual say about experiences of domestic violence? Is it explicitly mentioned? What resources exist already at an organization? And we support those employers who are ready to develop a specific policy in response to domestic violence. We support them to do that also. We help plan events to raise awareness. This is October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is why many of us on this panel our energy may be flagging this late in the month, but we're out in the community having conversations just like this each day. And that's something we can support your employer to do. And finally, we also offer consultation on specific projects. So for example, today I had a call with an employer that wants our support in identifying any vulnerability in their physical workspace. So what's the lighting like? What's the parking lot like, right? How are we examining the physical workspace to increase safety for all? So that's a little bit about Standing Firm, the work we do, and why partner violence is an employer issue. I think really at the end of the day, the more survivors we can support to obtain or maintain employment that pays thriving wages are survivors that may not need those deeper supports or those safety nets, in terms of public benefits, right? That we know some are in jeopardy at this moment. So that's really the mission that moves me in the work that I do with employers and my colleagues at Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh.
So unfortunately, it's very unstable right now. And Taylor, I'm not sure if when I introduced you, if you heard me or maybe it didn't come through real clearly, but I'm gonna come back around if you don't mind and ask, can you give us a little more information? You started in with talking about disparities, and I asked you if you would just kind of give us an idea of what that meant. Can you give us a little more information and just share more?
I surely
I'm gonna turn my
can, Ms.
camera off
Rhonda.
just for a minute because of my connection.
Yes, I appreciate you. And thank you again for circling back. I just wanted to share briefly, the definition of disparity is an individual receiving a different level of treatment, an unfair level of treatment, based off of things that we are quite familiar with, in our society. We can't ignore racial disparity and things that show up for Black women as opposed to their counterparts. Black women are 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy related causes, and violence and trauma amplifies this. Black women are more likely to experience poor birth outcomes, experiencing stress, poverty, unsafe environments, less likely to receive culturally competent care. And when we ignore these realities or silence these experiences, and I'm so glad we're going to have someone share directly their experiences. But when we do that, when we silence these essential voices, we miss opportunities to prevent these things in the future. And I know the individuals here through the organizations that we work for are really doing the work to provide intervention, but also seeking to understand stronger ways of preventing these statistics from continuing, to be a reality the way that they are. I just did a presentation during an all-staff meeting at Healthy Start, on behalf of our domestic and intimate partner violence support team. Our support team was created foundationally because we lost a participant at the hands of domestic and intimate partner violence. And we, although are aware, cognizant, and very much advocates at Healthy Start against any individual experiencing domestic or intimate partner violence, we knew that there was a more intentional need to be advocates for our staff and to make even stronger connections with community partners already doing the essential work. 20% of pregnant people experience domestic violence during their pregnancy, and that increased risk is greater for Black pregnant people and those who are under the age of 20. And so there's so many of these statistics: 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, nearly half of LGBTQIA plus individuals experiencing domestic violence in their lifetime. These are things that touch Healthy Start's doors because we serve families, and families come in all shapes and sizes. And it's really important for us to do what we can to eliminate barriers and access to treatment. And that 100% intersects with, helping those who are experiencing intimate or domestic partner violence. And so, the opportunity to be among you and to learn from you all is essential for us. And as a support team at Healthy Start, we like to invite partners to come in to provide presentations, not just in October, but year round, because we know that this is a year round need for advocacy. It's not just an October conversation. And so, that is something that we do at Healthy Start, and also just connecting our participants. Our staff really leans on our team to link individuals to support. So we're really grateful to be able to do that. Thank you all for circling back to me, Ms. Rhonda. Thank you.
Oh, for sure. And I've moved, so my background is still blurred out, but I am different area because I was having horrible internet connections. And I'm sorry, Taylor, that I think that kind of messed us up a little bit. Thank you so much for going back over that. Roxanne Davis, thank you for your patience. And we're so glad to have you here. I always stutter when I say we're delighted or we're glad or we're happy. Yes, because you are a survivor and you are thriving. And we are glad to hear that. And at the same time, it's heartbreaking to know that we have to have a platform like this. And if you look around this screen, everyone here is doing work toward the same thing. And it's a major problem. I remember when I started here, like I said, 30 plus years ago, the thought was like, well, actually, our mission statement back then said is to end violence, domestic no, was to end violence in the lives of women. And it just seems impossible. It just seems impossible. Megan, when she mentioned, touched briefly on the fact that some of the times that we're living in right now are really stress the need for us to be particular and pay attention, because the safety, the physical safety, Roxanne talked about, Epperson talked about homicides with an intimate partner violence. You know, we have to really, really pay attention to ourselves, our decisions, our thoughts, our comments, and anything and everything we can do. And that includes just watching everything that happens around us, and how can we address that in any way possible. We have to be willing to do that. So, yeah. So again, Roxanne Davis, thank you so much for your patience. And if you would just begin with, I'm not going to ask anywhere particular, anywhere you feel led in your heart to just share anything about the traumatic experiences that you had, anything that you want to share about your experience here at Women's Center and Shelter during that time, and any overview or support that you receive from Women Against Abusive Relationships. And again, anywhere you want to tell your story, I just want to give you some prompts, but however you see fit to share with us this evening, please do.
Well, thank you, Rhonda, and thank you to everyone who's present here this evening. This is a very important topic, and I'm really, really glad that we're talking more about it, and that there are more services available to help people like me. So I do say kudos to each and every one of you for the work that you're doing. I am sitting in my office. I work from home, and this is my home office. In the background are actually two bookshelves, and on the one directly behind me are a couple plaques. There's some lavender and another plant, and a salt stone, a Himalayan salt stone lamp behind me as well. My hair is in kind of like big curls. I am a African American woman, and I'm in my mid 60s. And I am very, very, very happy to be here, because as I really don't want to go into the abuse that I had experienced, because I don't want to trigger anyone here tonight. But it really is a blessing that I'm alive and present and able to sit here tonight. And I'm very thankful. And I will be grateful for any opportunity to share my story, because I am so grateful, and it is that important. Growing up for me, just to kind of give you a little background, I was adopted, and I'm from Pittsburgh. I had two brothers, older brother, younger brother. I had a two-parent household. Things were very, very stable. There was no violence. There was no arguing. Everything felt safe. And I went to college. I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and I was quite naive when I was young, thinking that, that image that I had from growing up was what the world was like. And so I had experienced violence as soon as I had entered college. I had experienced just about every type of abuse except for child sexual abuse. I did not experience that. So when it all started, I knew something was wrong right away. Like I wasn't in it for a while before I realized that things were not safe for me and that I needed to get out. Unfortunately, I had more than one abusive relationship, but it was the last one that I had experienced that almost took my life. And I was very fortunate, as Roxanne Epperson was saying, she was talking about compassion and not having any judgment. It was that compassion that actually saved me, because while I was in that, environment, like I had friends, I was part of a sorority. I had a very small family though at the time. But I didn't want to share it with anyone. I didn't want to share what I was going through with any of my friends, any of my acquaintances. I tried to hide it. I felt humiliated. I felt less than a person. It was like, why is this happening to me? Something is wrong with me. I really didn't want to hear, well, you should leave, because that just wasn't an option. And just talking with other people, I had heard or read where that is like the narrative that they would always receive. Oh, well, you should just leave. And it wasn't safe for me to make too much of any type of move. I did try getting away from my abuser. I did move out, but he followed me. He broke in. He set up camp there. He never left. I left again, and he followed me again. So there was the stalking, there was the breaking in, there was the physical violence, there was the spiritual and religious abuse, where, making me feel bad about praying. God isn't hearing you. You're living a life of sin, and God doesn't even like you. But that really was all that I had. And I did remember a verse in the Bible, because, even when I try to recall all the things that happened, it's really hard. And this is just an example when I say, when I would try to remember, because, being in a traumatic situation and living in a situation where you're always waiting for the next shoe to drop, it's hard to think. It's hard to remember. It's difficult to make plans and execute plans. But I did remember a verse in the Bible, or something in the Bible where God says, oh, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And I hung on to that for dear life. Unfortunately, and fortunately, I can say now, it took about 7 years for this thing to almost come full circle, where I was able to get out of danger and into safety. And it was one afternoon when an old friend of mine, who I hadn't seen for about 18 years, was in a meeting, and she said that God spoke to her and told her to come to me right now. So she said she had left her meeting and she had trouble remembering the house that I grew up in, because by that time my parents had passed away and the house was left to me. But she did, thank God. And she says, I don't know why I'm here. She says, God sent me. And what is it that you need? So I told her just a little part of my story. I felt like I was kind of backed into a corner, like, oh, now I really have to tell someone, So at that time, I was just mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted, that I just spilled as much as I could, not thinking that she could help me. She gave me her number and she says, well, if you need me, call me. So sure enough, it wasn't a week that had gone by where another incident had occurred, and I was threatened, and I was crying, and I called her. And she, fortunately, which this is a thing too, other people can make the call for you. She had called Women's Center and Shelter, and she says, I had already called and they're waiting for you. She says they want you to get to a safe location and give them a call, and they're going to pick you up. So the gut-wrenching part of that was that I would have to leave my house. And that was the part I tried to negotiate with God on, that, Lord, however you work this out, please don't let me lose this house. My parents worked very hard for it. It was really important for me to take care of it. But I knew in that moment, because she ended by saying, there's death all around you. And when she said that, it really struck a chord in me. And I knew that that was the truth. I knew that I was dodging death every day. So I called, I left, they picked me up. I cried like a baby because I never knew, I knew that I would never return back to that house again. And after getting to the shelter, I was welcomed and embraced with such warm arms. And I had explained to people multiple times that when I got to the shelter, it was like I was experiencing peace for the very first time as an adult. They gave me time to rest and kind of gather myself. They gave me as much time to kind of get my bearings, in terms of the transition. They sat with me, made sure that I was able to get all of the essential things that I needed, like the health care, making sure I was going to doctor's appointments, and they provided transportation to that. They made sure that my finances, that I was able to get money and food stamps. And also legally, they gave me the support to handle what legal battles that I, had to deal with. But also, they sat with me to come up with a plan, a goal plan. And the very first thing, and this is really what I would like to leave with most, is that safety plan. Always making sure that we can come up with something that whenever there is a threat, whether it's physical or emotional, that we have a plan on what we're going to do. So that might be having already called a friend and say, if I call you in the middle of the night, please answer. I might need somewhere to stay. It might be telling a neighbor, oh, if I leave the porch light on, please call 911 because I'm in trouble. Or having a plan for your children to make sure that they're able to run out and go somewhere and be safe. Like, your safety is number one. I didn't have one. So it was like the grace of God that was keeping me. But in terms of the emotional safety, like making sure that we know to breathe, taking that deep breath in, holding it, and breathing out slow regulates our nervous system, and it allows us to be able to have access to our higher brain, where we have logic and reasoning, and we can think and we can remember. But in any case, working with the YWCA or Healthy Start, like the other ladies had mentioned here, and coming up with that plan, call them, ask them to help. Call me. You call me, I'll leave all my information at the end as well. But in any case, the other thing that the Women's Center and Shelter did was they had taken us to McGee Hospital for what was called the healing space. So I really signed up for that one because I knew that there was a lot of internal, emotional, psychological healing that needed to take place. I needed to heal in terms of my own view that I had in terms of who I am and what I want to represent. So I had gone to the healing space, and what the healing space does is it pretty much works with all those internal parts, that we wrestle with. And we would meet once a month. I was at the Women's Center and Shelter for 72 days. They were gracious enough to give me extensions because I had difficulty finding housing, because I had to relocate. I couldn't go back to the same house because he had already broken in. And it took a little longer because I had some realtors or owners, property owners, say that they couldn't rent to me because they didn't want that trouble following me there, because Women's Center and Shelter was helping with some of my relocation costs. So they knew about that. And so, I had to appeal like all the decisions. So it took a little longer. But finally, I did get a place to live. And I was very fortunate enough to run into Roxanne Epperson because she was on my radar, because I felt a deep desire and yearning to give back to the community that saved me. I wasn't working at the time and I needed something valuable to do with my time. So I started volunteering with Women's Center, Women Against Abusive Relationships. That was 21 years ago. And now I'm actually on the board of directors there. I had gotten married to a wonderful man who was very sensitive and compassionate in terms of everything that I had gone through. And he was very patient with me. His name is Dr. Terrence Davis. I had gone back to school and got my degree in counseling because I started working as a family development specialist. In working with families, I realized that I needed to be able to be better and to provide more to help them. So that's what kind of urged me to go back to school. And after I got my master's degree, I went back to Women's Center and Shelter and started working with the residents and there are other participants that aren't part of the shelter in doing counseling there. And then I worked at Crisis Center North, which is also a domestic violence program, doing counseling there. Then I got this bright idea that I would start my own practice because I really wanted to zoom in on providing even better care. So I got certified in trauma treatment and certified in anxiety treatment and also certified in neuropsychotherapy. So I provide those services for my business, which is R.R. Davis Counseling and Consulting. I also work as a life coach with Random Thoughts Therapy, and they're out of New York. I and my husband, we started our own church, a new church, Three Rivers Metropolitan Church, and it's in the Pittsburgh area. And I also was very humbled in receiving the 2019 Governor's Award, Pennsylvania Governor's Award for Victim Services. So if I had anything to leave that I thought was really important with anybody here tonight, I would say without a doubt to reach out the best way you can for support, to get whatever support you can grab onto. Because as I alienated myself, I separated myself from any chance of being supported. And it felt very alone. And it's a very scary place. But as soon as I did latch on to support, everything got better for me. So I think that is it. Also, I do want to mention that I was part of a program with the YWCA. It was the Empowering Women program. And they gave me a life coach for 6 months, free of charge. And that was life-changing for me. I love that. So the YWCA is a great place to connect with as well. There's so many resources, thank God, that's out there to help us now, because this whole thing started with just a few women back in, I believe, the late 80s or late 70s, early 80s that sat around a table and discussed how we need help and we have to help each other because help isn't coming. So I'm really glad and excited that we have grown to understand that this is a problem that affects everyone, not just women or men that are being abused. It affects the whole community. And we all have to step up and lend a hand. So thank you.
Okay, I just got to start with a deep breath. Just say thank you so much, Roxanne. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your openness, your honesty. Thank you for sharing. And prayerfully that will lead, and prayerfully, hopefully that will help somebody, and I'm sure it does. So thank you so much. A couple of questions have come through in the Q&A. And Megan, I think the first one is directed towards you. So I'm going to start, and it's a 3-part question. So if you need me to repeat any of it, I will. The first part of the question is, does employer support vary based on sector?
Mhm.
I'm not sure what they mean by sector right there, maybe kind of work people do. How is that variance navigated? Does standing firm have different approaches?
Great question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for submitting that question. Yes, we do. And I think not only sector, but geography. So I guess I'll start by saying not many people know, but in 2020, at the end of 2021, heading into 2022, the city of Pittsburgh amended an anti-discrimination ordinance for employers that are based in the city of Pittsburgh. Employers of 5 or more are prohibited from discriminating against people in certain classes, protected classes. Some of them are likely familiar to you, race, ethnicity. But in 2022, that ordinance was amended to add survivor of domestic violence or perceived status as a survivor of domestic violence to a protected class, meaning that if an employer discriminates against an individual because that individual is a survivor or they perceive that individual to be a survivor of domestic violence, that individual has the right to pursue relief through the City of Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. And so that's, something I think that many employers in the city of Pittsburgh are not aware of. And that ordinance also recommends or urges employers to make reasonable accommodations for those individuals who disclose that they are survivors of domestic violence. And there's guidance linked in the city of Pittsburgh ordinance, which I should be able to put into the chat in just a minute. And those reasonable accommodations that employers must consider are things like changing the work schedule, changing the layout of the office, removing an individual from a public-facing website. So there are a lot of low or no cost options for employers to reasonably accommodate a survivor so that she may maintain employment after disclosing an experience of domestic violence. And Standing Firm is, of course, ready, willing, and able to support an employer through that process. But that is the first partial answer, right, to the variation. Unfortunately, the state of Pennsylvania does not have a similar statewide protection. And right now, Pennsylvanians are experiencing a patchwork of protections like the one I described. There have been some successful utilization of other federal law, like occupational health and safety, or the Americans with Disabilities Act, so OSHA or the ADA. But I would certainly encourage someone, to connect with me following this session for more information and potentially referrals to other support. So that's a little bit about kind of how we would support an employer depending on where they are located. I think in terms of sector, I think what changes is not our support, but our appeal, our advocacy to those employers. So for those employers that are in manufacturing, for example, many of those sectors have a supreme focus on safety, right? And you know, and risk mitigation. So that's how we discuss it with the employer, is that this is another tool in the tool belt to reduce risk or to reduce the likelihood of injury, let's say. For other sectors, you know, it's appealing to compliance if they're in the city of Pittsburgh, right? Educating them on their responsibility. And for other employers, there's kind of like a two-layered approach. Rhonda and our team with Standing Firm and Rhonda's team have worked together to support employers that are higher ed, right? Colleges and universities who have employees, staff, faculty, but are also supporting the needs of students. And so we've taken that kind of 360 approach to supporting an employer, but also the workforce that is supporting students, or in some cases, clients, if they're a nonprofit or even a for-profit organization. So I think our support can be tailored to the needs of the employer and the kind of work that they do. But you know, I think what changes, right, is the conversation with that employer to gauge, you know, what's going to motivate them to take action. And you know, different organizations have different budgets and leadership priorities, but we have been most successful when we have identified a champion for the work within the organization. And most often those champions are survivors themselves. They understand the importance because they have lived this experience, either as a child survivor or someone who has experienced domestic violence at some point in their life, which, as we know, as the statistics shared tonight show, is a lot of people. So I hope that answers the question. And advocates who, are listening right now and wondering what their employer might do, reach out. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about how to even approach the leadership within your organization. And I understand, that a conversation like that requires vulnerability and may involve some risk. And I'm happy to think through the best ways to broach the topic at your place of work. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Megan. That was wonderful. The second question I'm just going to put out. I'll help answer it, and then others please join in. But the question says, what greater systems change solutions would be beneficial in the greater Pittsburgh region? What can advocates push for those in power and leadership to do around these issues? And again, thank you for that question. That's a great question. And I'll begin by saying that Women's Center Shelter about 2 years ago, maybe 3, because time just goes so fast sometimes. But about 2 or 3 years ago, Women's Center Shelter embarked on and now has created a leadership task force that works on this issue. And at the top of that, I don't want to say top because the other part is also extremely important, but it involves the mayor and the county executive and the district attorney's office and DHS, and so that they come together once a year. They just had their annual meeting, matter of fact, last week, but they come together and they look at this issue of intimate partner violence and what's happening in Allegheny County around intimate partner violence and what can be done, what kind of changes can be made. So that is really good. The other part of that is a worker bee committee, I'll call it, and the worker bee committee meets weekly. So that group, they get together and they actually look at cases that's going on in our city. And because it also involves the DA and ADA and the ADA's office as well, there's a lot of access to information. So that task force or that subcommittee of the task force is able to really get together and look at who might be what would be considered a high risk abuser, someone who uses power, control, and abuse, and may be really dangerous. And there are factors that we can look at. I was in a meeting not with this leadership and this task force I'm describing, but I was in a meeting one time and it was geared toward looking at fatality reviews, that particular group that I was in. And the speaker said, all murders, all homicides can be prevented. And that thing really weighed on me because I'm like, what? Really? How? So having a fatality review and being able to look back at the intricate parts is one way to have greater and to reach solutions. So for the question, how do you get to solutions and change? You have committees, you work together. Honestly, you cannot work in silos. City of Pittsburgh or anywhere else where we're talking silos, you have to work together to reach those kind of high level um, decisions and high level changes. So that's my input to it. And anybody else, the lights just went off where I am. Anybody else, I have to stand up and wave. They'll come back on. But anybody else who may want to add to that, what greater systems change solutions would be beneficial in the greater Pittsburgh area? So what do we think could happen here in our region that would be beneficial? Any thoughts? I have another one. Let me stand up and put my lights back on. Wait a minute.
I would like to see just more campaigns that not only amplify and highlight anti, abuse and violence against any human being, but also hold space for those exposed to violence and then become violent. I don't know what that would look like, but I would just love to see something intentional here in our city and beyond that that involves just like public statements that this is a problem that yes can be prevented and that there is support for those who have been abused and those who actively use violence for power and control.
Taylor, if I could add to that, because when someone in our city, when there's a homicide, a domestic violence, intimate partner violence homicide in the city, and Megan, you can attest to this as well, radio stations, newspapers, television, they are all bombarding us. Now, I don't want to make that sound negative because, again, I spoke earlier about how important it is to raise awareness. That is critically important. But one thing I have said, they don't never put this in print, and they always happen to cut this part out of when I say it. But I say this to the larger media outlets. If you were to do a campaign, just as you said, Taylor, if you were to do a campaign where each of you would take 1 week that you're going to talk about intimate partner violence and you're going to help raise awareness, whether that is radio, television, all the radio stations, the local television stations, all the print media, and have some kind of campaign where you're constantly keeping this attention on this problem in our county, in our city, I think we can start to make a difference. I really do. So I was really, really glad to hear you say that. Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I don't know if there's any other questions. The second part of this question is, what can advocates push for those in power and leadership to do around these issues? I think it's safe to say voting. And this is, we're a bipartisan organization. So I'm not saying how to or who to, but to vote. Voting is, it's our voice. It's actually a part of our voice. And we have to use our voice every way that we can. So again, we're bipartisan. I'm just making a statement to vote. And to, once you do, stay active with your legislators, your state representatives, your senators, stay active, call them, and thank them when you find around, rapid rehousing. If they gave more money for rapid rehousing, give them a call and thank them. Like, my name is Kimberly. I work in rapid rehousing, and you just gave $2 million more. So yeah, I'm fantasizing, but you gave us a lot more money, and we want to thank you, because we definitely want to call them when they're not doing what we need them to do, because they're there for us technically. they are there for us. So I want to make sure we are making our phone calls and staying active. So, yeah. So anyone else want to chime in on that, or anything that you didn't get to say? Roxanne Epperson, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to, the education.
But I'm sorry, is it just me? I can't hear you too well.
Anybody else not hear me?
That's a little better. That's a little better.
Okay. Educating survivors and victims to me is very, very important. And I have a free ebook for anybody who wants it. It's called Red Flags, 25 Characteristics of Someone Who Abuses the One They Claim to Love. Because I truly believe that had I known these red flags, I probably may have been able to avoid some of the abuse that I've endured. I always say that even if you know this information, that's not saying you might not get into an abusive relationship, but you will leave quicker, or you'll know the signs, and you might not even get into it because you're aware of these signs. And I was also going to ask Rhonda if she would mention the Bright Sky app and its what it does. I'll just say this: every year every year we've had 2 galas. We celebrated year 20 and then year 21. And both times I had the Bright Sky app at the seat on the tables or at the tables, and I keep forgetting to mention what they are. So I'm going to put that on my website. But could you please tell the folks what that's about, please?
Yeah, I don't mind. Megan, do you want to? And if not, I will.
One of you. Yeah. I should have said either of you.
No, that's quite all right. I'm happy to put the link in the chat and talk a little bit about the Bright Sky app, which Women's Center and Shelter was instrumental in developing. But it's an app that you can download to your phone or device, and it can look like a gaming or weather app, but what it is the front door to some really important information. So anything from a quiz that sort of helps you explore whether what you're experiencing may be abuse, right? So a call back to Rhonda describing an average hotline call where the caller may say, is it abuse if, right? So there's lots of resources like that. Through the app, there is a journaling function. So if you're listening tonight and wondering if what you're experiencing may be abuse, start keeping track, right? If you think that your phone or device is secure from your abuser, I want to add that caveat because a lot of abusers are sophisticated and savvy when it comes to monitoring technology use. So that is really important to consider when using technology to find resources. But the app also has access to the domesticshelters.org directory of providers, just like Women's Center and Shelter. So no matter where you are, you can connect to a provider in your community and find out if there's shelter space, counseling, legal representation, legal advocacy, programming for children, and sort of everything in between. So the Bright Sky app is a fabulous resource. In fact, there's also something called a widget that can be pre-installed on employer-issued devices like laptop computers. And so we certainly encourage the employers that are part of the Standing Firm Network to make good use of the Bright Sky resources as well.
And can I just add real quick too? I'm working on.
Thank you, Roxanne, for bringing that up. Thank you, Megan, for addressing it and describing it.
Yeah,
Any other questions?
I guess you guys can't hear me.
Okay. We can't hear you now, Rox.
Wow. I don't understand why. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little better.
Wow, this is weird. I was just going to say that I'm doing the counterpart to the red flags called 25 Characteristics of a Healthy Relationship, because we want people to know what a healthy relationship looks like as well. So that's going to be coming out. So hopefully that'll be on our website, and I'll make sure that everybody's on this webinar will know about it. Okay. If anybody heard that.
Yeah, I think we did. Kimberly, yeah.
So I did want to say, Roxanne had just mentioned just people being aware of their rights. So the Violence Against Women's Act protects individuals in housing programs from being denied housing or evicted solely because of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, or in the survivor's safety is prioritized. So again, just people being aware of what their rights are in regards to the housing space. And it's just important for us to always create a safe, judgment-free spaces for survivors to feel comfortable sharing their experiences, so that we can support them whatever it is that they may need, whether that's housing, whether that's employment, whether that's food, anything that we could do to support and stabilize that person in their families. So one of the things that at YWCA Greater Pittsburgh, we work collaboratively with our partner families to achieve their goals. We follow a housing first model. So our primary focus is to get people housed and to set them up for success. And then we focus on creating a housing plan and a service plan for them so that we can help them increase their skills and increase their income. So I did want to make sure that, like Roxanne was saying, that those individual safety plans are in place so that people are comfortable and that they know that they have the support if they choose to leave their situation.
I hope it's okay if I
Thank you.
jump in, Rhonda. I just want to lift up what Kimberly said about protections for housing, and invite anyone listening who wants to learn more about the legal protections at home or at work to join us next week. It's our last event for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and it's a continuing legal education event, but anyone is welcome. If you are an attorney and looking for that continuing legal education credit, that's a great opportunity. But otherwise, if you're interested in learning more about the housing protections Kimberly mentioned, or the employment protections I touched on briefly, more information is in the chat.
Great. So Taylor and Kimberly and Roxanne and Megan, this has been my honor and my pleasure this evening to moderate this. You all have been wonderful. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank everyone who's listening in. I want to remind you, please, to take forward something from this evening. A brief recap let us know that Taylor talked about that for advocacy is using our voices. Kimberly talked about and let us know that their program is for women, men, and teens. That was really good to hear that the Greater Pittsburgh YWCA will also help teenagers. Roxanne talked about the barriers. She gave us a long, great list about barriers to leaving, but also Roxanne Davis encouraged us and let us know there are barriers there, but you can break through them. You may give up your house, you may give up your car, but you may keep your life. That was extremely important. Please know that Megan and Standing Firm, her organization, will come to any employer. And she said, together we'll go to any college, higher education, and we will help you learn about how to make it safe for your employers. You have good employees. You want to keep them, and helping them stay safe is very critical to them being able to stay in their job and in their positions, right? So please remember again to just be encouraged. Don't want that to sound Pollyannish, like really be encouraged. There is help. There are resources. Use your help, use your support, right? And please go to websites, go to Google, put in domestic violence, put domestic violence Pittsburgh, put whatever you want to just start. Put your question in there. Am I being abused if this happens? Just put your question in there, see what happens, really. And again, I want to thank I'm gonna find the name. I want to thank our sponsor, Power Home Remodeling. Thank you all for making this possible for us. And again, just please do something. And please, oh, there's a short poll. So please complete the short poll about this experience this evening. 1-800-799-SAFE is the national hotline number. 1-800-799-7233 is the national hotline. 412-687-8005 is Women's Center Shelter's 24-hour hotline. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe evening.